What's up guys, this is Kota Gio, and in today's video I interviewed a super interesting guy. His name is Lucas. He works at American Airlines as a lead developer / consultant. He has 5 years of experience and absolutely no school degree. I talked to him before and after the interview for hours, and the amount of knowledge and skills that he's holding in his head is just truly amazing. Extremely smart guy. So let's go ahead and dive into the video. We're gonna hear his story, where he began, where he is now, and he's gonna give us some hints to the developers out there of how to be successful and what he does on a daily basis to stay top of this industry. So let's go ahead and dive in. Make sure you subscribe and like this video. I'll be putting out a lot more videos of the interviews of the peers in this industry, so you don't wanna miss out. Hope you guys like it. So you're a lead developer at American Airlines?
Well, kind of. So what I do is I work as a internal consultant of sorts. Mm-hmm. We do DevOps dojos is what the industry term for it is. Basically, we work with a team for a period of time, and we help them improve their delivery process, improve their development process in general, and sometimes we help them migrate to different stacks or lift and shift an application to the cloud, mm-hmm. Whatever their needs are. For that.
How long have you been doing that?
I've only been doing that for a few months now.
Mm-hmm. What was your prior experience?
Before that, I was a developer, senior developer, and then a lead developer, and that was back when I was at Allstate.
Okay. So what was your first job?
My first job, I mean, that depends. My first job at American, I started in their call center.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. What about as far as development goes? What was your first?
It was
Was it American?
Yeah, I was a developer in the Advantage program.
Okay. What was your first stack that you used?
My first tech, it's pretty much all Java for the most part. In the, that's kind of the popular stack. The stack at American is pretty much Java, so that's kind of what we focus a lot.
Have you touched any other tags?
I mean, we do full stack, so we technically use, Angular, React. I kind of, right now, especially with the job I currently have, I have to work with whatever the team's working with. So if it's something new, then I have to prepare. We get a few weeks, maybe a month of notice ahead of time before we work with the team. So that gives us enough time to kind of study up on whatever stack that they're going to be working on, so we can help them out. When
was the first time you wrote a first code ever?
Oh, I don't know. I must have been in high school or something. I've always been messing around with computers. I don't know about programming. I played around with C a long time ago. Picked up, my dad's a software engineer as well, so probably when I was in middle school or high school, picked up one of his books from the bookshelf and just started playing around with C.
So you kind of like self-taught while you were a kid. What age would you say you started having an interest in like coding specifically?
At least like 17 or 18, okay. But computers in general, my whole life.
Yeah. Do you remember your first project that you wrote?
It's probably like a little to-do application in C. Yeah.
How much of a trash code would you say now it was?
Oh, it was terrible.
It was terrible?
Yeah, it was absolutely terrible.
So I mean, that's because that's the thing that like a lot of people when I talk to them during school, they ask me like, okay, what do you do while I'm in school? Can I help myself get better in my chances of landing a job when I graduate? Yeah. One thing I always tell them is like, write trash code. Just write projects that just kind of help you, whether it's like meaningful or not, just have something on your resume. So it sounds like that's kind of what you were doing.
And if you ever look back at your old projects and say, oh, wow, that was trash, then that's good.
That's good.
You're growing.
Doing the right thing, right? Yeah, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So what do you do to stay on top of modern technology?
A lot of, so it really just depends on what it is that I'm studying. If it's something that's brand new, I'll normally try to pick up something like a Udemy course, just go through it real quick and get as much information as I can to get up and running. And then the rest of it, I can almost use the documentation available for whatever platform, whatever software that is that I'm trying to create a class for, and then translate that to a lesson.
Yeah, so it almost sounds like you try to go out and learn the basics so you have an idea, and you let the work kind of make your expertise on that.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting. So knowing that you started picking up those languages on your own when you were 17, 16, so I'm curious about your school. Did you go to school?
So originally, although I loved and I played around with programming, my idea was actually to become a lawyer. So
interesting.
Going to law school.
Okay.
That I quickly realized that that wasn't really for me. And I realized that while I was already working at American, that I was getting more and more involved with the technology and getting to know a lot of people on the tech side of American Airlines. I kind of made my way in without school. So I do not have formal education, although I did do many college classes of C++ and Java, but I never actually completed school.
So what are your thoughts on, in comparison of like going to school and getting a degree versus doing a self-taught versus doing boot camps?
Yeah, I don't know too much about boot camps. I know that I've heard about it. I think it really depends. School is going to give you, I think if you're going to school, the most valuable thing you're going to get out of it is probably the theoretical.
Yeah.
And so if you are going to school, focus on the theoretical, try to absorb that as much as possible. Language-wise, there's no way colleges are going to keep up with everything going on and the latest and greatest. So the truth is that I think if you want to learn a stack that is popular right now, you're going to have to do that on your own. Or the other alternative, of course, is boot camp. Boot camp's probably going to be more relevant to a very specific role. So you're probably going to do a boot camp for like web development, where you're going to learn React, Angular, or something similar to that. Just remember that those boot camps are probably going to be very specific to what's going on right now. So I would assume that you don't expect to go to a boot camp and you're kind of set for life, right? You're always studying. The life of a developer is always learning. I would always try to be self-teaching. Even if you do boot camp for, let's say, web development, learn something else as well. You know, there's always value in knowing other things, and when you start learning other languages, and that's kind of something that helped me along, is that you'll realize almost every language kind of has similarities across the board, and once you know one, it becomes so much easier to learn another one. So boot camp would be a good way to kind of kickstart you, and then just keep exploring, keep learning. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. So talking about the industry a little bit, diverging from your personal experience, what was it like getting jobs out there? How competitive is it? How hard it is to actually find a job?
So I've been fairly fortunate. I've worked at American almost my entire career, and then I had a period of time that I was working at Allstate. So that was the only time that I was job searching. I didn't really have a whole lot of difficulty applying for jobs. I pretty much just applied for that Allstate job, and that's where I went. And then I came back to American recently.
Would you say that your lack of the full official degree has been a bottleneck in any way?
Honestly, it has never come up. So if you can learn on your own, go for it. To me, it's never going to be about whether or not you have that check mark on your resume. It's going to be about how interested are you in the subject? Are you passionate about what you're doing? And if you are, you're going to end up spending time learning. You're going to spend time teaching yourself, and you're not going to be doing it just to get a job. You're not going to be doing it just to get a paycheck and just to kind of pay the bills. Yeah. It's not just a job. And that's kind of where I feel like that's what I think helped me the most, is that I was doing it as a hobby, thinking that I was going to go to law school, and then I realized, wait a second, I can make this hobby my career.
Right. And
so it doesn't bother me at all to go home after work and keep coding and keep studying. So that helps. So my biggest thing is, it's not necessarily about where you learn. It's the fact that if you learn it well and you're passionate for it, you're gonna do well.
Yeah. So one big thing that I've noticed with other people that may not be in the software engineering and they want to get in it is that they don't fully understand it. Like a lot of people think that like just software engineering is just you sit down and you write code, you just write websites. That's websites very vaguely speaking here. So how would you recommend someone learning and choosing their field? Because like you got DevOps, you got web development, mobile development, you got all sorts of different kind of like networking and security. So how would you recommend someone actually choosing one?
Choosing like where to start, choosing a language.
Because it would take you years to learn them all.
It's always a tough one. I mean, JavaScript is kind of a popular one, although it tends to be very, there's so much out there, and it can get confusing when you start jumping into it. It's like, oh, ES6, ES5, and you
got TypeScript on top of
TypeScript, and you have to run that through Babel or TypeScript compile or whatever. So it gets kind of convoluted. One of the most straightforward languages, and it's kind of good for creating good practice, is like, to me, it's Python. Now, I've never actually worked with Python professionally, but that was one of the first languages that I tried to learn properly, and I was able to build decent little command line applications, and it really gave me a better perspective of what a language should be and kind of like how to put things together. Yeah, I would say that's a very good one to start with. Java is great. Probably will give you more jobs than Python will, but it is more of a corporate type language, and so it looks the part, so it's more intimidating. Whereas Python is more welcoming. It's very easy to kind of jump in and get started.
Okay.
So Python's probably a good one to get going. So.
Have you ever had a job where you had to work on the legacy applications a little bit more outdated? Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
I've spent a lot of my time working with either rewriting or migrating legacy applications. So my thoughts on that is that if you're going to work in a big corporation, that's going to be a fact of life, and embrace it and try to enjoy it.
Yeah, I felt I had my last job, not for very long, but for a little bit I had to work on like Visual Basic, and for me that was kind of too far behind. I feel like I was kind of stuck and not moving forward. Do you ever feel like having those kind of jobs almost prevent you of growing in your career?
Well, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that you can have as a developer, is to work on something that's pretty far out of date and try to come up with a good strategy, a good solution to bring it into more modern frameworks, bring it into more modern languages, and how to bridge that gap, because you can't do it overnight, right? Some of these systems are huge, so you have to start breaking it down into pieces and strategizing how to move that over. Tends to be what I've done a lot in the past couple of years, is helping migrate older systems and improve them. So
interesting. So going back to your career, you mentioned that you were a developer, then senior developer, then lead developer, and then now you're lead consultant. That was in a time span of five years?
Yeah, so just about, yeah.
Okay, so how were you able to, because that's a pretty big jump going from a developer to a lead consultant of American Airlines. It's a pretty huge jump. So can you briefly tell us how you were able to climb that ladder so fast?
It's hard to say what exactly allowed me to do that, but I would say that just trying to always be on top of my knowledge and constantly studying, and if something comes up at work that I'm working on, and just trying to be as knowledgeable as I can on whatever's going on, and yeah.
How much time would you say you spend outside of work making sure that you stay top-notch on top of these technologies?
Oh, too long.
Too long?
Yeah, so I tend to spend hours and hours and hours studying every week.
Okay, so you're passionate about the career. You truly love it.
You might even call it an obsession of some sort. Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that I see, that people that are in this career not because of the money, but because they love it. They're just so much more successful because they're doing it out of their heart. So what do you see yourself in 5 years?
That's a tough question, and that's kind of something that comes up quite a bit when you're thinking about the career path of a developer, right? Because typically most career paths kind of end up leading to management. Although for a developer, once you cross over into something like management, then unfortunately you're not coding anymore. And so to me that would be kind of a letdown. So I honestly don't really have an answer. I don't know what more from here, but whatever it is, I hope I'm still pretty close to the code and still really close to products like that. So.
Would you say that your responsibility is more important than the title?
Yeah, I don't really care too much about the title. I just want to do something that I'm happy with doing, and I want to do something that I can see that my work impacts other people, products, and more importantly impacts them in a very positive way and helps.
As far as your growth of technology, do you attend any events or seminars out there?
Whenever I can, if there's a conference nearby or if it's a relevant event, then yeah.
For someone that's trying to look for those, where should they begin on searching those events, or how can they come
that's
across
a
them?
good question. I would just search on Google, obviously, see if there's any type of meetups. There's actually the Meetups app, which is probably a good idea to kind of search for groups around town or conferences, see what's going on. Typically, the way I hear about any type of conference or event is a couple of people in the company are going, and I sign up and end up going with them. So,
do you do any type of hackathons?
Yeah, so American Airlines does have a hackathon every year. We've done that several years now. But
are you able to talk about what kind of tasks you guys solve?
I mean, hackathon at American is pretty straightforward. It's build a product that would help American and American's customers. So it's pretty cool. You have a panel of judges that are comprised of people around the company, even some customers in some cases, and they get to vote on their favorite apps and a couple of prizes depending on technology and also the idea, and then yeah.
Interesting. So you mentioned Google, and I must ask, do you think that you could be a developer without Google?
At first, right, when you're starting out, a lot of your sources end up being YouTube videos, Stack Overflow, or anything or stuff like that. More into when you start dealing with more and more complex problems and problems that people might not have had yet, you'll have to learn how to really go in and read documentation and understand what was why things are built in certain ways and actually understand what's going on. I would say that I would probably be very, very much in trouble if Google entirely was gone, just because that's how you find the documentation. But as long as the documentation is available, yeah, I could probably do without Stack Overflow. Just make sure, as long as the documentation's still there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on artificial intelligence and machine learning? Have you done any kind of work in that?
I haven't done a whole lot of work with that. Yeah, so I don't really, I think it's pretty cool. I would love to probably get my hands dirty with some of that, but I haven't had a chance to yet. So.
Do you think there will be a lot more demand on that in the next 5-10 years?
It's definitely there's definitely going to be a growing demand more and more, but I don't know that it's going to, it really will depend. I think those are going to focus more on certain products, like obviously self-driving cars and companies that are dealing with data. AI is going to be very helpful because there's no way to process all of that. There'll always be a demand for that. I mean, it's kind of a scary topic when you start thinking about really what AI can do in the long run.
Right. We don't know where it's going to go.
It can do a lot, right? So I just hope it can't write code. So.
Yeah, so some people that ask me that, like, mainly people that may not understand development that much, is like, can we have robots write code? Well, it's kind of like a really hard question, because like you have to have a robot understand what is it that you want him to do, which I don't think that they can fully take over without human instructions.
It'll take a long time.
Very long time. Yeah, I think we're safe.
Now, what it can do is, stuff like let's say the YouTube algorithm. That's something that you could probably talk about all day. That it has some sort of AI behind it, and it learns from observing user content and observing trends, and it starts writing rules. Now, it's not writing code, it's starting to determine certain rules that decide what to show to who. Now, it's not really code, but it also in the past would have been something that someone would have had to write some logic for, and that logic doesn't have to be written anymore. So that's where I think it kind of replaces some of the development work. But you still have to have a lot of people there to kind of train and groom the AI. So,
how do you see the difference between software developer and software engineer?
Ooh, I honestly don't really see too much of a difference in the terms. Typically, software engineers just more used. I would say maybe used to describe someone that's kind of more experienced across the board and actually developing and designing. Full scope of applications. Maybe developer might be a term that applies more to the person just doing the coding. Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's very ambiguous.
I do, on my free time, sometimes I help students in school, tutoring them, and biggest thing that I see is that they have a hard time understanding what is it they're learning. It's so abstract that they can't really put it in place. Although it's really hard to say concretely, like, this is what you should do to understand it fully. Do you have any recommendations for them to kind of get an idea of how to go about understanding this better without waiting for them to graduate and start putting it into their career?
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that I always try to do, and this is more when I'm learning something new, if I'm using a Udemy course or something to learn a new language or learn a new platform or stack, I try to follow what's going on there, and a lot of times those courses will have a little project that they're having you build. I try to come up with an entirely different project of my own making and apply the same lessons that I'm learning in each step of the way. Now, it may be a completely throwaway project that I'm never going to use again, but I always try to make something up myself because then it really forces you to understand better what you're learning and actually apply it in a way that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Now, I would say if you're really early on, try to not be intimidated by not knowing everything. One of the most comforting things when you really start working with, especially with like a lead developer, is that no one knows everything. Everyone is, if you ever meet a developer that says that they're excellent and they're 100% proficient with a given language, it's probably not entirely true. They're still having to look stuff up, even in documentation or like we talked about earlier, Googling or Stack Overflow. Pretty much everyone has to do that, especially if you're dealing with full stack and you're dealing with multiple languages, multiple different environments. You're not going to remember everything. Just try to understand the concept, try to stick to it, and don't give up because it gets a lot easier.
Another thing that I see a lot of interns or fresh out of school developers do is they spend a lot of time digging the same hole over and over. They want to figure out so bad that they just spend days and days and days. How do you know when you should stop and go get help out there?
I would say anytime that you're spending hours and hours and you're kind of just super frustrated, give yourself a break. Even if you're not going to go out and get help, just give yourself a break. Go do something else. Because sometimes, and this happens all the time, you'll be stuck in a problem for hours and hours, and you walk away, and then you come back with fresh mind, and you look at it, and it just starts making more sense. You just sometimes need a break. If you've been working on something for a long time, your brain is just not going to allow you to understand it properly because you're so frustrated. And being frustrated is not good for your motivation to keep going either. If you're trying to learn software development and you're frustrated 90% of the time, you're going to associate that frustration with what you're doing, and you're not going to be happy. So take a break, you'll be fine. Problem will still be there when you come back.
So many times I mean, that's 100% like so many times I went back to my desk and I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
It's right there.
Like, it's right there.
You get tunnel vision when you're staring at a problem for too long. So,
if someone is watching and they're having a hard time either finding a job, or they just kind of got out of school, or they're still in school and they're just confused about the whole software development, what kind of recommendations would you give them?
Don't be intimidated. Like, first of all, when you're looking at jobs, don't be intimidated by all the requirements. 90% of the time, no one fits all the requirements on a job posting, right? Your job posting is more of like a wish list. So if you feel like you fit a few of the requirements and you feel confident in those areas that you know, freshen up on those, study up on those, and be willing to say, you know what, I'm not 100% familiar with that if something comes up, and just keep trying. Because at the end of the day, what they're looking for when they're hiring is someone that fits the team and someone that has some of the knowledge that they're putting on the requirements. It's not always, they're never going to find someone that has everything. So as long as you come in and you know your stuff, it's kind of understood that you'll learn the rest on the job.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Lucas, for coming in. Thank you for answering all these questions. I think a lot of people are going to get some value out of this, and people that are fresh out there in the industry, they'll probably learn quite a bit from this conversation. So thank you.